Coming in at number 10, we've got an honorable mention with DC Comics' The Tarantula. Now, this character only gets to be an honorable mention on this list because he actually predates Spider-Man, first appearing in 1941, which technically could be argued makes Spider-Man a tarantula ripoff, especially considering the fact he also had a web shooter, although in this case, looking like a literal pistol. With Spider-Man going on to become the much more popular character, later depictions of the tarantula would draw inspiration from the famous wall crawler. However, while Spider-Man may share some similarities with the initial Golden Age version of the character, the tarantula these days is best known as a violent female assassin, also known as Catalina Flores, most frequently coming into conflict with Nightwing. Nevertheless, being one of the first spider-themed heroes definitely earns the original tarantula a spot on this list. Coming in at number 9, we have Reno Bryce, aka the superhero WARBLADE. Originating in the Image Comics series known as Wildcats, this superhero team was very obviously inspired by the popularity of the X-Men of the time, especially considering its now independent creators had a lot of history with the X-Men franchise. And given Wolverine's level of fame, it was a given that one of the members of this new superhero team would be similar, and that hero was WARBLADE. Armed with liquid metal armor that he frequently used to create Wolverine-like claws as the result of having his body tampered with by the Cyberdata company, WARBLADE was every 90s superhero turned up to 11, creating a violent and green-haired metallic killer that even Wolverine might ask to tone it down a notch. Coming in at number 8, we have Clayton Cortez, aka Weapon H. When Clayton Cortez was just a regular Marine, he fought back against corrupt orders from the Roxxon Corporation, and thus was captured and sold to the same Weapon X program that had grafted adamantium onto Wolverine's skeleton. Attempting to improve upon that original experiment to create the ultimate mutant killer, Weapon H was intended to have all the benefits of Wolverine with the pure strength of a gamma-powered creature, a radioactive ripoff of Weapon X. Eventually escaping from his confinement and still possessing enough of his memory to avoid becoming a monster, Weapon H continued to use his gamma and adamantium-infused strength to fight back against the Roxxon Corporation and their creations, becoming yet another anti-hero in the Marvel Universe with a penchant for stabbing people with their claws. Coming in at number 7, we've got a bit of a detour to the land of video games with Slash Man from the Super Nintendo classic Mega Man 7. As I've already mentioned, Wolverine and the X-Men were huge in the 90s, and their popularity can be seen in references even in Japanese video games of the era. One of the biggest examples is Slash Man from Mega Man 7, one of the primary boss characters that wields a familiar-looking triple claw alongside some rather obvious robot sideburns. Furthermore, his level in the game takes place in a jungle, highlighting a connection to beasts, and with dinosaur enemies that could even be a reference to Marvel's Savage Land. Slash Man is an intense boss fight that definitely feels like you're fighting with an angry X-Men. Coming in at number 6, we've got the villain Deadlock from the Youngblood comic series. If you take one look at this guy, you can obviously see exactly who inspired him. He's practically just a Canadian flag-colored version of Wolverine's most iconic costume. While Deadlock does have some features that allow him to stand apart, such as his beast-like fighting style being due to the fact he's part vampire rather than a mutant, at the end of the day, he's a pretty blatant example of a slightly edgier Wolverine, but without even a completely new design to go along with it. Just a bit of a palette swap. So honestly, if these two wound up meeting in a fight, I'd probably have to put my money on Wolverine. Coming in at number 5, we have Rosabelle Mendez, aka PANTHA. Introduced as a new member of the Teen Titans during a period where the X-Men had just recently overtaken the Teen Titans in sales, PANTHA was a blue and yellow wearing berserker with anger issues and a mysterious past, complicated by a secret government organization experimenting on her. Sound familiar at all? And while PANTHA was a powerful addition to the team for the 90s and early 2000s, she's one of the few comic book heroes that died during a major event and then never got resurrected, meaning maybe DC realized her backstory was just a little too similar to everyone's favorite Canadian berserker. Coming in at number 4, we have Killraiser from the Image comic series Cyberforce. Many of these 90s ripoffs of Wolverine were all focused around the idea of being even more extreme and edgier than the already extreme and edgy Marvel comics of the 90s, and few characters show this exaggeration more clearly than Killraiser. Whereas Wolverine is iconic for being able to grow 3 blades from his hands, Killraiser can literally grow blades from anywhere, his entire body covered with scars from the frequent surprise attacks he's utilized over the years. As a mute character, Killraiser was never really developed much beyond his debut appearance, but still goes to show just how over the top these 90s characters could get. And speaking of extreme characters, coming in at number 3, we have Lobo from DC Comics. Originally introduced as a villain in the Omega Men during the 80s, Lobo wouldn't achieve notoriety until the 90s when his character design began to be used as a parody of the rise in extreme characters at the time, with Wolverine specifically mentioned as a primary influence. Lobo wound up being embraced by fans both as a parody and as a genuine dark and gritty anti-hero. And while he's definitely been fleshed out in the decades since to be completely standalone, his love of cigars will always keep him with at least some ties to the original Wolverine. Coming in at number 2, we've got another character from Cyberforce with the infamous Ripclaw. With the Cyberforce team originally having been planned to be written as a spin-off of the X-Men and X-Force books of the 90s, it makes sense that some members of this independent super team would be similar to some of the X-Men, but Ripclaw's comparisons to Wolverine really take the cake. With indestructible claws, frequent uses of berserker rage, and a mysterious backstory, Ripclaw for the most part is just a not copyright infringing clone of Wolverine. However, Ripclaw has since gone on to be an example of a prominent early Native American superhero, with stories focusing more on his unique heritage and ensuring that Ripclaw can be known for something more than just a Wolverine ripoff. And finally, coming in at our top spot, we have Daken, the son of Wolverine. Named after the Japanese term for Daken is the tragic child that Wolverine never knew about, his mother being murdered before Wolverine even knew he had a son. Cut from his mother's body by the Winter Soldier, Daken was raised to hate his father and in their very first encounter, slashed open his stomach and left him to bleed to death. Being similar to your father isn't enough to make someone a ripoff, however, and that aspect of Daken came when he deliberately chose to be a replacement for his father on Norman Osborn's Dark Avengers team, taking on his father's Wolverine name, but putting his own deadly spin on it. In this case, ripping off Wolverine was totally intentional, and that's why Daken ranks at the top of this list. Coming in at number 10, we have the hero Popclaw from the television adaptation of The Boys. One of Wolverine's most iconic features is his signature triple claws, originally made of bone, but eventually covered in the metal adamantium along with the rest of his skeleton, able to pop out at a moment's notice with a snicked sound effect. On The Boys, a satire examining twisted versions of both Marvel and DC heroes, Popclaw is an obvious reference to Wolverine's most well-known ability, capable of growing bone blades from her wrists and capable of going full berserker mode with them. On top of this, Popclaw has all the super strength and enhancements that heroes using Compound V possess, meaning just like her inspiration, she's tougher than she looks.
Number 9. Rampage. Not just taking inspiration from the Hulk, but likely taking inspiration from his cousin, Jennifer Walters, aka She-Hulk, as well. Rampage was originally known simply as Kitty Faulkner. Dr. Kitty Faulkner, that is. Kitty was a brilliant scientist working for Star Labs. An accident wherein Kitty was exposed to massive solar radiation during a demonstration gone wrong caused her to be transformed, however, into the orange giantess known as Rampage, who also sported a red mouth SHADOWHAWK, a fight with Superman where he absorbed excess radiation from her giantess Rampage form, caused her to return once more to her human appearance as Dr. Faulkner. There would be other times, however, that Kitty would return to her Rampage form. Like She-Hulk, she also appears to keep her wits while in her Hulkish appearance. Number 8. OMAC. OMAC stands for One Machine Attack Construct, and was created by Brother Eye to be used in their war against those who would oppress them. Originally in New 52, OMAC was the human known as Kevin Coe. Kevin Coe was an employee of Project Cadmus who would be taken over and in essence assimilated into the being referred to as OMAC, a servant and warrior of Brother Eye. Brother Eye can activate OMAC whenever they like, transforming Kevin into the biotech being possessing super strength and durability known as OMAC. While in this form, originally Brother Eye would be in complete control of OMAC. However, when Brother Eye was killed, they gave Kevin both his personality and control back as one of their last actions. The consequence of this was that Kevin would no longer be able to revert to his human form, becoming only OMAC. Number 7. Doomsday. While Doomsday and the Hulk bear some differences, a big one being that Doomsday is traditionally a villain, whereas Hulk is usually more recognized as a hero, they also bear similarities too. Both were created through experimentation, one an accident, one on purpose. Both are super strong, monster-like creatures, and they even bear a resemblance to one another. Doomsday is gray, which actually was the color Stan Lee originally wanted for the Hulk's appearance. However, when problems surrounding this desire arose, they turned the Hulk green instead. When Doomsday first fully appeared in Superman the Man of Steel issue 18, he was seen wearing a containment suit. And while Doomsday might be gray, his containment suit was very green, which all added to his Hulk-like appearance, in my opinion. Of course, the suit was likely added to create intrigue as to who or what was lurking within it. But still, it's interesting that DC decided to pick the color green as opposed to any other color. There's a lot of other colors out there, folks. Number 6. Doomed. If you thought Doomsday was a Hulk ripoff and you're feeling me there, you are going to love this one. Doomed was created when Metropolis University student Riser was infected with the Doomsday virus, similar to other versions of the virus we've seen pop up in the comics, but not quite as deadly as the one from the Dark Multiverse. Instead of killing Riser, it transformed him into a monster-like creature known as Doomed. He had similar powers to Doomsday, but has never really been considered a villain, more of a hero. Immediately after his transformation, Doom was forced to flee the authorities who saw him as a monster due to the accidents that he caused, despite the fact that Doom attempted to actually save those that he had endangered, and he didn't intend to create any of that chaos. Riser would transition between his Doomsday form and human form and would end up being affiliated with the Teen Titans for a time. Number 5. Loose Cannon. This Hulk ripoff even has his strength levels similarly tied to his emotions. The angrier he gets, the bigger and stronger he gets. Loose Cannon was created by Jeff Loeb and Lee Moder, and is basically a big blue version of Hulk who was originally the human Eddie Walker. Walker regained the use of his legs, which had been disabled in a car accident when his metahuman gene was activated, turning him into the hero known as Loose Cannon, who was later redesigned during New 52 to be a Teen Titans villain instead. Eddie's skin has also been known to change color with his mood as well, and while he does appear to be similar to the Hulk in terms of powers, transformation, and abilities, he also bears a striking resemblance to Hank McCoy, the bouncing blue beast of Marvel's X-Men, especially his New Earth design. Number 4. Damage. Ever wondered what would happen if Captain America's exposure to the super soldier serum actually turned him into a monster? Well, wonder no more. DC has the answer to your question with one of their very own Hulk ripoffs. Damage is Ethan Avery, a youngster who grew up admiring superheroes and wanting to be just like them. At one point during his time serving in the military, he was offered an opportunity to become just that, and of course, jumped at it. He volunteered for the Damage program, a program that used experimental procedures in an attempt to create superheroes. Ethan passed all the necessary tests after applying and was given the Damage serum, which transformed him for 1 hour each day into a super strong, monster-like creature who bears a striking resemblance to the Hulk, down to his tattered pants. While in this form, Ethan would have very little control and basically adopt another rage-fueled berserker persona, also similar to the Hulk. Number 3. Behemoth. Behemoth comes to us from DC's Earth 8. He was basically designed to be a mock version of the Hulk. He's pretty much parody Hulk, where instead of Hulk being a big, ripped, muscly giant, he's a big, blue, oversized man baby. Literally. He even wears a diaper. Behemoth was created by Grant Morrison, who tweaked the world of Earth 8 to make it basically be DC's alternate universe version of Marvel 616. On Earth 8, Behemoth is part of a team known as the Retaliators. I wonder what famous Marvel team that name could be referring to. The Retaliators. Number 2. Monster. Monster was introduced during Superman/Batman. He was basically a big green powerful monster who was possessed by Kryptonite Man and created by Joker and Mr. Mxyzptlk, who had seemingly teamed up to take down both of their sworn enemies, Batman and Superman. Seemingly. Monster wasn't the only one they created, however. No. He was part of a team known as the Maximums, a parallel to Marvel's Ultimate Supers originating from Earth 1610. All you have to do is look at Monster though to really see how much of a ripoff of the original Hulk he really is. Number 1. Smash. Smash was basically Rob Liefeld's attempt at salvaging work he'd already completed but was unable to use. Liefeld had been working with Marvel previously on Captain America stuff, but when Liefeld kept apparently missing deadlines and sales ended up being not where Marvel had hoped, they let him go. The book was moved over to Wildstorm, and Liefeld's direction for the plot was pretty much fully abandoned, but he still found a way to make use of the work that he had already done, creating a new character for the comic Fighting American with Awesome Comics, which was started by Liefeld. Smash, which looked a lot like another very familiar Marvel powerhouse, but purple instead of green, and wearing a chain around his neck. That's about it.
Number 10. SHADOWHAWK. SHADOWHAWK has a lot of similarities to Batman, and of course, some differences. His look is slightly based off of him, as you can tell, and the whole fact that he's this kind of dark, brooding vigilante, and that he was created around the time trying to bring people in that liked Batman. Although he is a lot darker than Batman in certain ways. Like, Batman doesn't really like killing, depending on who's writing him, but SHADOWHAWK will, and he will even leave certain people paralyzed. Yeah, he is pretty different in certain ways. But overall, you can tell that there was at least some inspiration behind it. Number 9. Confessor. Confessor is a vigilante from Astro City. Now, he is a priest, and he even has a sidekick, Altar Boy. Astro City is known to take certain elements from other heroes and make them their own. The other big one being Samaritan, which was their take on Superman, which I talked a bit more in the last video. Now, Samaritan is a lot closer to Superman than Confessor is to Batman, but Confessor has been known to have some, and is the main vigilante of that universe. He is even known as their main kind of detective vigilante. But he has had some great comics over the years that have been really well reviewed, and he's gradually been more and more drawn away from the Batman parallels. Number 8. Midnighter. While his costume and some aspects of him immediately scream Batman, Midnighter has been lucky enough to continue to evolve and become his own hero. For one, he has powers, and he is openly gay and has been married to his husband for a very long time, which shows how progressive this series is. Now, I feel like the trend on this list is to take aspects of Batman and get them to get people interested and then slowly make them their own. And usually it actually works pretty well, which we see here with Midnighter. He also really enjoys violence and fighting, which is not really Batman. He likes beating up people, so that's kind of another difference. Number 7. Nighthawk. Nighthawk, also known as Kyle Richmond, was a millionaire playboy who decided to become a vigilante. Does that sound familiar? Well, he did start out as a villain, kind of. He eventually became more of a hero and even joined a number of Marvel teams. His parents both died, but not at the same time, and not because just someone randomly killed them. But he inherited their money and first started out spending it and kind of being that typical millionaire playboy until he changed his tune. Now he has become a popular character in his own right, and as you can see, he was clearly inspired by Batman, and just shows how popular Batman was that all these heroes just kept popping up, trying to replicate his success. Number 6. Night Owl. Watchmen is one of the most celebrated graphic novels of all time, and has spawned a feature film, which got a mixed response, but also a TV sequel on HBO, which everyone seemed to really love. Now, I'm not bashing Watchmen, and no character is a direct ripoff of Batman, but there are a couple of characters that are similar to Batman in the comic. The first one is Night Owl. Right off the bat, pun intended, is his costume. They are pretty similar, plus he has a ton of gadgets and even has the owl ship. He is this rich guy who decided to take on the vigilante lifestyle. There are a lot of similarities, but he still does things that make him slightly different. Number 5. Rorschach. So I've talked about Night Owl, now let's talk about Rorschach, who is arguably the most popular from the Watchmen comic. While of course he's not exactly like Batman, the tone of the character is very much in line with him. He is this dark, brooding vigilante that doesn't take no for an answer. And yeah, he does some crazy things, but so does Batman in certain films and comics. Rorschach is not the exact same, but he was inspired by the Cape Crusader, and that really worked to his advantage. Number 4, Moon Knight. Moon Knight is a character that is no doubt going to become so much more popular soon. He is getting his own Disney Plus show and is going to join the MCU, which has fans very excited. Like a lot of other characters on this list, Moon Knight has evolved as he's gone along, but there are, of course, some parallels to Batman. Now, Moon Knight is fairly supernatural in nature, and of course, is known to go a little bit crazy every now and then. But both their alter egos are rich guys who are now using, what they have to become vigilantes and hunt down those who are evil. Although sometimes Moon Knight is, as I mentioned earlier, goes crazy and kind of becomes a villain. But hey, Batman has done some crazy things too. But Moon Knight did take cues from Batman and has since become his own thing, and now a lot more people will see exactly what that means. Number 3, Big Daddy. While there are similarities in both the comic and movie version of Kick-Ass, it was the film that really made Big Daddy more like Batman. The most obvious thing was his costume. It seems like it was very much inspired by the Dark Knight trilogy. But that was kind of the point. Big Daddy was supposed to be this big-time vigilante that took on crime. I mean, he kills, which Batman usually doesn't, but all of it was very much intentional on Matthew Vaughn's part. I mean, hey, it gave Nick Cage a chance to flex his superhero muscles outside of the Ghost Rider franchise. And fun fact, he almost played Superman as well. In the failed Superman film, Superman Lives. He even had a costume and everything. You can check that out online if you're curious. Number 2, Daredevil. Daredevil, the man without fear. Now, he is not an outright copy of Batman, but certain writers have admitted to taking certain Batman elements and adding them to Daredevil later on. Overall, though, he has very much become his own hero. I mean, the obvious parallel is that they're both vigilantes and fight crime and strike fear into the hearts of criminals. I guess when Daredevil started, he fought more in the daylight and wasn't really a full-fledged vigilante, but later on it changed to making him come out more at night, and that's when the comparison started. But overall, Matt Murdock is pretty different. For one, he has powers. 2, he's not this rich playboy. And 3, he's a lawyer. While he may have taken a few tricks from Batman, Daredevil has since become his own hero and is one of the most popular Marvel ones for that matter. Number 1, Green Arrow. Yes, while Oliver Queen has evolved and become his own thing, he did start off as a Batman copy. I mean, he was a billionaire playboy vigilante. He had an arrow cave, an arrow car, and an aeroplane. They weren't exactly trying to hide the fact that they wanted a second Batman. But over time, Green Arrow became his own hero. He became less and less like Batman. He's kind of like a modern day Robin Hood, depending on who's writing for him. They gave him an amazing origin story about being trapped on an island and being forced to adapt and survive. He has a big personality, gets involved with politics. I mean, he became the mayor in the comics and the TV show, and is a really big family man. He has one of the most famous and long-lasting relationships in the comic world with Black Canary. He also became so popular that he started his own television universe, the Arrowverse. He may have been created to be like Batman, but now the Green Arrow stands strongly as his own hero.
Number 10, PITT. This one is a little more loosely connected in terms of story, but the look and connection of PITT's creator to Hulk is what causes comic fans to draw parallels. PITT was originally created by Dale Keown for Image Comics. He first appeared in his own self-titled series PITT in the 90s, and wow, he definitely has a 90s look. Check out that sweet studded leather vest with plaid-inspired lining and all of those chains. You can never wear too many chains in the 90s. Dale Keown, PITT's creator, was well known for his work as a penciler on the Incredible Hulk series during Peter David's run, and it's usually this connection and PITT's ginormous, muscle-bound appearance that make people think of the Hulk when they see him. PITT himself was a human-alien hybrid creature from outer space who was created in a lab aboard a spaceship. It's like a cosmic Hulk.
Coming in at number 9, we've got another honorable mention from Spider-Man's own life. It's Ben Reilly, aka the Scarlet Spider, aka the infamous clone of Peter Parker. Originally created when the supervillain the Jackal cloned both Gwen Stacy and Spider-Man, this clone would go on to adopt its own unique name of Ben and the moniker of the Scarlet Spider, with a slightly unique costume that added a hoodie to the traditional Spider-Man outfit. While initially clashing with the original Spider-Man, the Scarlet Spider would go on to become a powerful ally during the 90s, even replacing the actual Peter Parker for a while as the only Spider-Man, with his own updated costume as well. So, does he still count as a ripoff after all of that? We'll let the comment section figure that one out. Coming in at number 8, we have DC Comics' most obvious Spider-Man reference, the hero of Earth 8 known simply as Bug. Hailing from a universe that's deliberately designed to be filled with references to the rival Marvel universe, Bug is apparently such a famous hero that he has his own movie series with the tagline, "The Hero You Hate to Love." Complete with a Gwen Stacy-esque girlfriend named Kirsten and a pumpkin-themed villain named Halloween, Bug couldn't be a more obvious Spider-Man reference if he tried. Coming in at number 7, no list of weird rip-off characters would be complete without some representation from the Sonic the Hedgehog universe, with Stealth the Hedgehog. That's right, the Archie Comics Sonic series has a multiverse and continuity almost as complex as some of the big superhero publishers. And in one of the alternate Sonic realities of this Archie Comics multiverse, Sonic for some reason had to wear a superhero costume while saving all of his animal friends. With the suit obviously being inspired by Spider-Man's own costume and Sonic already having the habit of running up walls, it isn't hard to see that Stealth the Hedgehog is just a little bit Spidey inspired. Still not sure why a hedgehog needs a secret identity though. Coming in at number 6, we have Derek James, aka the DC superhero Sideways. Now, I could list all of the similarities that Spider-Man and Sideways have as solo teenage superheroes, but honestly, just look at this guy's mask. There's no way he's not directly inspired by Spidey. Luckily, however, Sideways does have enough of a unique power set to stand out, despite his very similar costume. He's capable of creating unique rifts in space-time that allows him to both teleport within his own dimension or travel to different dimensions entirely, a power that landed him in hot water the one time he accidentally teleported to the dark multiverse. Nevertheless, Sideways is an up-and-coming hero in training, still learning how to properly use his abilities, but maybe someday he can continue and become an icon like Spider-Man. Coming in at number 5, we've got another cartoon reference with Danny Phantom. Replace the word spider with ghost, and you can basically copy and paste most of Spider-Man's defining features into the character of Danny Phantom. As a young teenage boy named Danny Fenton that was accidentally granted ghost-themed superpowers, he has to fight as a disguised superhero against an army of evil ghosts, all while preventing his family from finding out that he's spending his spare time as a superhero. Luckily, Danny Phantom was a pretty well-written show and managed to set itself apart with its unique ghost-themed villains, and letting Danny Phantom stand out as one of Nickelodeon's best superheroes. Coming in at number 4, we have the DC villain Black Spider. At first glance, Black Spider might seem like a bit of a stretch compared to others on this list. Sure, his costume is a bit similar, but in the comics, Black Spider's backstory is completely different, usually revolving around him being a heavily armed assassin and merely being as deadly as a spider. However, in the Young Justice animated series, Black Spider was taken in a new direction to be more obviously a villainous interpretation of Spider-Man, complete with web-related weaponry, and even being voiced by Josh Keaton, the voice of Peter Parker from the fan-favorite Spectacular Spider-Man TV show. Pretty on the nose for DC to make a former Spider-Man a bad guy, don't you think? Coming in at number 3, we have Jamie Reyes, aka the Blue Beetle. While his adventures with Young Justice in the comics have led to the Blue Beetle being much more of a standalone hero than some of the other entries on this list, you have to admit there's a decent amount of obviously inspired crossover between the two characters. Both are primarily known for being younger heroes, both are known for being sarcastic and relatable, both have obvious bug themes, and both have had extended adventures with an alien suit covering their body, even if Jamie's situation is a bit more permanent. All of this is to say that the Blue Beetle shows how a hero inspired by Spider-Man can grow into their own unique individual. Coming in at number 2, we have Mark Grayson, aka Invincible. The son of Omni-Man, the most powerful superhero in the Image Comics universe, and a clear stand-in for Superman, Mark was raised for much of his life fully aware that he was half human and half Viltrumite, but believing his father to be an icon of justice and peace for the world. Unfortunately for Mark, the Viltrumite Empire is actually dead set on conquering the universe, with Omni-Man actually supposed to be preparing the Earth for invasion by Viltrumite forces. Horrified at everything his father stands for, Mark wound up embracing his role as Invincible even more, using his Viltrumite strength to become one of the strongest heroes in his universe and becoming essentially an even more powerful version of Spider-Man. A teenager just trying to find a balance of living his life and protecting the people he cares about against villains that are incredibly personally connected to him. And if that doesn't sound like Spider-Man, I don't know what does. And finally, coming in at our top spot, we have Terry McGinnis, aka Batman Beyond. Now, Terry might be one of my favorite characters to ever wear the mantle of Batman, but he definitely owes a lot of inspiration to Marvel's very own Wallcrawler. The Batman Beyond series came out after the success of the 90s Spider-Man animated series, which saw Spider-Man frequently fighting high-tech villains and laser weapons, alongside the comic book debut of Spider-Man 2099, a Spider-Man of the future. These futuristic settings, alongside turning Batman into a sarcastic teenage wisecracker, would become iconic in the Batman Beyond series and show how the 90s just might have been one of the greatest eras for both Batman and Spider-Man.
Number 10, Samaritan. Samaritan comes from the Image comic series Astro City, which is the city it's based in. Now, Samaritan is very similar to Superman, although as time went on, he did start to establish his own unique identity and started to lose some of the Superman comparisons. I mean, he can fly, has super strength, and can even travel to different dimensions. Or one other one specifically that is nicknamed Closet, which is where he keeps a lot of his kind of valuable items, which is kind of similar to the Fortress of Solitude in a way. It's his safe place. Number 9, Majestic. Majestic, also known as Mr. Majestic, comes from something called the Wildstorm universe. It's a shared comic book superhero world. Majestic is one of the most powerful heroes in that world. He's an alien that came to Earth and started protecting it as Earth's greatest hero. He can fly, he has super strength, super speed, flight, laser vision, x-ray vision, freeze breath, microvision, electromagnetic vision, telescopic vision, and energy manipulation. Oh my god, that's a lot. As you can see, he has a lot of powers, and a lot of them are eerily similar to the Man of Steel. He even looks like him. Not suit-wise, but his face is very similar. He did end up actually meeting Superman once during this weird kind of time storm. They ended up crossing over. Number 8, Superior. Superior is technically a Marvel creation, but he doesn't exist in the main Marvel continuity. It's its own thing. Superior was created by Mark Miller, and needless to say, there are a lot of Superman comparisons, but also some Shazam ones as well. One example being his powers. He has super strength, speed, flight, and freeze breath. He also started out as a kid who ended up making a deal with a demon and ends up becoming his favorite superhero. But he does end up fighting for his own soul. So it's not completely the same, and it was meant to kind of, those parallels are meant to be there. So, I mean, but overall there are a lot of similarities, but it was kind of meant to be that from the beginning. Number 7, Hyperion. Hyperion comes from Marvel and is, well, you guessed it, very similar to Superman. First off, he's from a different planet and crashed on Earth when he was a baby. The government found him and ran tests on him, and they found out that he has abilities. He was brainwashed by the government, who was scared that he would eventually turn against them, but eventually he just wanted to be left alone. His powers include super strength, speed, flight, and he has a powerful breath. He also has atomic vision, which is similar to Superman's X-ray vision. And, get this, he gets weaker when he's around certain types of radiation, which is kind of similar to Superman when he interacts with kryptonite. Number 6, Blue Marvel. Blue Marvel, also known as Adam Brashear, is also from Marvel Comics, and is a hero who gained his powers after being exposed to antimatter. He was raised in Chicago, he was a US Marine. Also, one of his best friends ended up becoming his greatest villain, known as Anti-Man. Blue Marvel's powers include antimatter manipulation, concussion beams, stun bolts, flight, energy shield, super strength, invulnerability, speed, superhuman sense, molecular manipulation, light generation, and longevity. Number 5, Plutonian. So Plutonian comes from the Boom comics. It was created by Mark Waid. In this series, titled Irredeemable, it follows Plutonian, who is the world's greatest superhero. But he slowly starts to become evil and become the world's most terrifying villain. It was basically what would happen if Superman had gone evil. It was very popular, going on for 37 issues, and even spawning a spin-off series called Incorruptible, which follows one of that world's greatest villains who turns into a superhero in order to stop Plutonian. That also went on for about 30 issues. And there has even been talks of bringing Irredeemable to the big screen, although that was a few years ago and not a lot has come out since then. Number 4, Omni-Man. Omni-Man comes from the Image Comics superhero universe created by Robert Kirkman, who everyone knows created The Walking Dead. He is the dad of one of that world's most famous heroes, Invincible. Omni-Man was from another planet and was sent to Earth to, help the human race advance technology and protect them from extraterrestrial threats. Although, if you read the comics, there's actually a lot more to that story, and I will not spoil it here, just in case people want to check it out. Omni-Man has super strength, speed, and is immortal. He is the world's Superman, essentially. And if you haven't read the series Invincible, check it out. It's ended its run a few years ago, but there's an animated series in the works from Amazon Prime, and it's a really unique and interesting series, and it just opens up this massive superhero world. You should really check it out. Number 3, Sentry. The Sentry isn't a full-fledged copy of Superman, quite the opposite, but there are some similarities overall. A lot of people call him Marvel's Superman, even though personality-wise, he's completely different. I mean, Sentry deals with a lot of stuff, and isn't a full-fledged good guy. He is someone who's constantly battling his own inner demons, and, is kind of a villain. I mean, he kills people. The reason he's compared is because of his powers and costume. I mean, he has a big S on his costume for starters, which immediately draws comparisons, and he looks like he is this beacon of hope when you see him. But oh man, do not look at Sentry for hope. I mean, I would really wonder what would happen if he joined the MCU. He has a crazy origin story, and I'm curious how they would tackle that on the big screen, and what he would kind of look like and interact on the big screen. Number 2, Shazam. Billy Batson, originally known as Captain Marvel, but now known as the hero Shazam. Some people may not be aware that Shazam wasn't always part of DC Comics, but he was originally part of a company called Fawcett Comics. It was their answer to DC's Superman. Captain Marvel was actually selling incredibly well when it first came out, because people really related to the fact that a kid was becoming a superhero. But this, of course, didn't make DC very happy. DC opened up a copyright infringement lawsuit against Fawcett, saying that Captain Marvel was just a ripoff of Superman. Fawcett basically had to stop releasing the comics and eventually ended up licensing him off to DC. And then DC ended up acquiring all of Captain Marvel and all of his characters and integrating them into the DC world. He was still named Captain Marvel for a long time, but, well, as we all know, he ended up getting rebranded as Shazam. I absolutely adore this character, and I'm so happy that the world is finally seeing how cool he is, and I can't wait for Shazam 2. Oh, and Black Adam. Jeez, both of those are just, I hope they're amazing. Number 1, Homelander. Man, Homelander is so freaking scary. Now, a lot of you are probably a lot more familiar with him after season 1 of the hit Amazon show, The Boys. Of course, that is based on the comic series of the same name. Now, Homelander is meant to be like Superman, or anti-Superman. That was the point. Almost every character from the Seven, which is, their world's Justice League, was meant to be like that. I mean, look at Queen Maeve. But Homelander may look similar and have similar powers, but oh boy, he is nothing like Superman. He is straight up evil, but that's why everyone likes him so much. He is this insane, manipulative, and basically straight up crazy version of Superman. It's meant to scare you. The whole point of him was that he was basically raised in a lab, and that kind of turned him into what he was. Imagine someone with the powers of Superman being a straight up psychopath. It's a terrifying thought, and that is Homelander. But a lot of the world thinks he is this perfect hero. I mean, The Boys is such an amazing show, and I can't wait for season 2. September 4th, guys. September 4th! And they're releasing 3 episodes on September 4th, but then after that, it's just 1 episode a week, which I actually kind of like. Sometimes I feel like when you binge a show, you kind of end up forgetting things as you go along, or after, you binge it, and then a few weeks later, you're kind of like, oh wait, what happened then? But when you watch it spread out like that, you take more things in and you remember stuff. So I'm excited that Amazon is doing that.
Number 10, Apollo. Apollo, who was originally from the Wildstorm universe, but is now technically part of DC continuity after Flashpoint since he appeared in DC's New 52 run. While Apollo's origin is different than Superman's, his powers are pretty similar. Like Superman, he gets his power from solar energy, and has super strength, speed, flight, and vulnerability, and can shoot energy from his eyes. He needs to constantly absorb solar energy in order to maintain his power. So if he ends up exerting himself so much and uses all of it, he will be powerless until he can get his hands on some more. Now that he is in the DC universe, he would be considered to be one of their most powerful heroes. I mean, even giving Superman a run for his money. Number 9, Sun God. Sun God, also known as Zoran, is from Marvel Comics. He was born in another universe. Now, not a ton is known about him, but he is very, very powerful. He has super strength, he can fly, and has vulnerability. His costume is also very similar to Superman, despite being different colors. He's a part of the Great Society, which is very similar to the Justice Society of America. He has even taken on the Hulk in a fight, just showing how strong he is. I mean, he was able to withstand Hulk's punches. Like I said, other than that, there's not a ton of info on him, but the stuff we do know shows you how he is yet another hero that was inspired by the success of the Man of Steel himself. Number 7, Gladiator. Gladiator comes from Marvel Comics, and on the surface you might think, he doesn't really look like Superman, so how is he similar? Well, my friends, let me tell you. For one, his powers are essentially identical. He has super strength, super speed, flight, heat vision, microscopic vision, freeze breath, and invulnerability. Like that's Superman's in a nutshell. His real name, Clark, is also very similar once you realize it's just Kal-El and Clark merged together. Plus, his costume contains the same colors that Superman uses. While his backstory and facial features and all that are very different, Gladiator is clearly inspired by the Man of Steel. The other thing is that he's not really an outright hero, so there's that kind of as well. Number 7, Icon. Icon, also known as Augustus Freeman, was an alien who crash-landed on Earth in 1839. He was raised as a slave during those times, but managed to escape through the Underground Railroad, and eventually became the superhero known as Icon. He even joined the Justice League at one point and has fought Superman on a few different occasions, though he's never been able to beat him. He has super strength, flight, super speed, enhanced senses, self-sustenance, and positron manipulation. His backstory, like I mentioned earlier, is very similar to Superman since he's from another planet and all and crash-landed on Earth and became a superhero and has very similar powers. But even though he has similarities, he has grown to become his very own unique hero. Number 6, Supreme. Created by Rob Liefeld, who is the creator of Deadpool, who of course is famously known as a comedic ripoff of DC's Deathstroke. But the funny thing is, Deadpool actually became so much more popular than Deathstroke. And he has also grown to become his own thing. But Rob decided to try it out with another hero, Supreme. Ethan Crane, also known as the superhero Supreme, got his powers after he came in contact with an element known as Supremium. Now, his powers are virtually identical to Superman's. I mean, he has super strength, super speed, invulnerability, flight, heat vision, freeze breath, X-ray vision, but he also has something called energy absorption. Now, like some of the other ones on this list, he was created to be similar to Superman, like just exactly how Deadpool was meant to be like Deathstroke in a lot of ways. That was the main point of creating this hero. They didn't just go like, oh, I'm just gonna create this hero and just be like, oh, he's just unique in his own way. No, he was clearly meant to be like Superman. They also ended up introducing their own versions of Supergirl and Crypto in that universe, in the form of his cousin, Suprema, and his dog, Radar. Number 5, Metroman. Now, Metroman doesn't come from Marvel or DC, but if he sounds familiar, it's because he is from a hit animated movie, Megamind. Now, Metroman was made to be the Superman of that universe. I mean, his costume is similar, it has a big M on his chest, and he's an alien from another world who discovers he has powers on Earth and uses them to fight crime. It was very cool to see, and he was even voiced by Brad Pitt. He can fly, he has super strength, super speed, heat vision, X-ray vision, freeze breath, and the list goes on. I mean, he's clearly inspired by the Man of Steel. I mean, he was designed to be a parody of Superman in that way. And it really worked for the movie. Megamind wasn't the most successful film from DreamWorks, but over time has become more and more popular as more people have continued to discover it. And I mean, fans have been wanting them to make a sequel for years, even starting online petitions for them to do it. Number 4, Marvel Man. Okay, so Marvel Man has a very weird and interesting backstory. You see, he originally was basically Captain Marvel, but after Fawcett Comics and then all the lawsuits from, because of Captain Marvel and being similar to Superman, they just decided to morph him into Marvel Man. But there were some changes. For example, he looks very, very different. And he was no longer Billy Batson, but was now Mickey Moran, who instead of meeting a wizard, Shazam, meets an astrophysicist who gives him powers related to atomic energy. And instead of saying Shazam, he now says Komoda to transform. So, I mean, there are some changes, but him basically being Shazam and Shazam being inspired by Superman makes them all connected in some really weird, strange way. Number 3. Thor, the god of thunder. While he is not an exact copy of Superman, Marvel did take cues from both the Norse mythology and Superman and mix them together to create one of the best superheroes of all time. In terms of power, he's on the same level as Superman. I mean, depending on the writers, and that goes for both characters. But Thor is Marvel's answer to Superman in a lot of ways. Someone who possesses godlike abilities, I mean, in this case, Thor is actually a god, but also lives among the human race, and not only protects Earth, but protects multiple planets and realms. Thor has become become so incredibly popular thanks to his appearance. I mean, not only just in the comics where he was already popular, but to mainstream audiences because of his portrayal by Chris Hemsworth. Number 2, Captain America. Okay, so while Captain America isn't the same as Superman in the power department, it's more of his personality and values that let you know that he's a bit similar to him. But this is not in a bad way or anything. I mean, not a lot of the characters on this list are, as I said before in my other video, ripoffs aren't meant to be, like, it's not meant to be a bad term. I think Marvel wanted something similar, but something that could also stand on its own. They both share similar colors and stand for truth and justice. They also both inspire hope and will never give up fighting no matter what. I mean, the crazy thing is that it's not new information to know that DC in recent years has struggled with Superman on the big screen. But Marvel has found tremendous success with Captain America. Some people have said that Superman should be more like how Marvel has handled Captain America on the big screen because of how relatable he is. Number 1, Goku. Let me start off by saying one of the main things I remember about my childhood was watching Dragon Ball Z. All my friends watched it, and it was such a big deal for us. Whenever a new episode would come on, we would always be super excited to talk about it the next day in school. But back to my main point, one thing I and a lot of other people noticed was that Goku and Superman were a lot alike. I mean, Goku, known on his own planet as Kakarot, was sent to Earth from a planet that got destroyed when he was a baby. Now, his purpose was to destroy Earth, but a head injury made him forget about that, and he went on to become Earth's greatest defender, and showed off abilities that no one had really seen before. There are even other similarities, as you can say Vegeta or Raditz are similar to how General Zod came back to Earth and such. But even with those, the whole Dragon Ball franchise has been such a delight to watch over the last few years. Here's hoping one day we will see a really good live-action adaptation of it, because we are still waiting. It's there. It has so much potential.